Taylor and Carly, part 1. I'm just kidding, now that I have your attention. Lil Kim and Biggie, part 1. You are so messy. You think I have a death wish? Are you crazy? I don't know how other millennials feel, but there are definitely people that were very present. I have cat hair all over my face. There are definitely people who were very present musically and within society that younger people may not know how impactful they were in music and pop culture. And Lil Kim and Notorious B.I.G. are some of those people. And I know what you're thinking. That's not true. Well, there are people who ask me who are the Spice Girls. So who knows? Who knows? I do feel like Lil Kim is a personality where it's easier for people to maybe mock her or pick her apart than understand her story. And growing up, I would watch VH1 and all these like documentaries all the time and like Behind the Music. And Tupac and Biggie were talked about a lot. You know, like summer vacation where you'd like watch VH1, you know, like I feel like it was a really present conversation. So Kimberly Jones, yeah, she's a Cancer. July 11th, 1974. Cancer sun, her moon is in Aries. And Christopher Wallace is a Gemini. Moon in Virgo, Pisces rising. That's a smooth talker. This is an incredibly cute photo of Lil Kim when she was 7. I love it when kids do this. I don't know what it is. Maybe I love when like kids try to look like grown-ups a little bit. Like I'm like, I don't know, I love it. So Kimberly was born and raised in Brooklyn. And when she was 9, her parents separated and her mother and her were going couch to couch. And she says in an interview where her mother said that she felt that it was unfair for her daughter to struggle with homelessness with her. So she took Kimberly to live with her father. And her father was very verbally abusive. And I'll read you a quote. There is a Washington Post article called The Mask of Lil Kim. It's from the year 2000. And here is a quote. There was a great deal of verbal abuse, she recalls. And there was one time when my mother had 2 black eyes. My father told people she had fallen. And something that we've learned with people sharing their stories as time goes on and people are more and more open about the abuse that they've endured. What we hear time and time again from children who are victims of abuse is later on how much they excuse and how much they make excuses for the people they love. Also, I can't imagine abuse being familiar to a child to be healthy. Kim says that her and her father were actually really close until she turned 13 when they started arguing over like teenage stuff. Boy. Part 2, Lil Kim and Biggie. So we're talking about Kim's upbringing, right? So at the age of 13, she starts fighting with her dad over teenage things like hair and makeup. She wanted to dye her hair, she wanted to go out, boys. And soon the fights became really physical, and she recalls many times where she'd be woken up with his fist, which is like, and I don't know her relationship with her father now, but I just want to say, what a big tough man to fight a 13-year-old girl, right? Whatever, I just had to say that. There are rumors that once, out of self-defense, she did with scissors to her father. And I just want to say, Olive, my research assistant, helped me with this, and she put this in an asterisk. Note, these are not equal actions. She was a child and he was an adult. I also asked her which one I should do next, and she said this one. She said that she learned a lot and she really enjoyed it, so I love that. I love that she's learning, not that Lil Kim had to literally defend herself against like her blood relative and the person she was, the person that she felt she was born into and should have protected her. That's, yeah. Growing up, she says that her favorite novel was one about a foster child. And she said that she could relate to that experience, which breaks my heart because there are so many kids in the world that want parents, and there she was with a parent, and she still felt so alone. Rainbow Jordan. Rainbow Jordan. The novel is essentially about this child facing neglect, all the while still trying to fit in as a teenager. By the age of 14, she had had enough of the violence in her home, so she decided to pack up her bags and essentially either live on the streets or go from home to home. This is Kimberly at 14 in Slick Rick's teenage love video. And she's beautiful. So by 14, Lil Kim was already in survival mode. She started selling drugs with her boyfriend. She started working at a department store. which, how is that legal? Whatever, it was a different time. And she started having relations with men for food and housing. So between the abuse, the grown-up decisions, being in survival mode, and her mother being unable to provide for Kimberly, she was forced to grow up really quickly. And I always say this when people tell other people, oh my God, you're such an old soul. I'm like, trauma, maybe? Lil Kim herself has even been quoted describing this time in her life as, I did whatever I had to do to survive. This is a quote from her mother. Kim had no sisters. She was surrounded by boys all the time, but she had such a strong personality. I never had to worry about her taking care of herself. I knew that she would be able to do that from when she was like 2. Which is so sad to hear. Part 3, Lil Kim and Biggie. So Lil Kim's mother says, you know, I never had to worry about Kim. I knew she could always take care of herself. And it's funny to hear that because, I mean, not funny, but it's interesting to hear that because when Lil Kim started rapping, nobody believed how young she was because her lyrics were so, como se dice, grown. It was like a lot of life experience for someone that age, and people didn't want to believe that somebody that age had had that much to absorb. There is no way that I can read those lyrics on this app, but you are welcome to give it a Google. So the Washington Post article that I referenced earlier, that same journalist within that same article wrote a bit about Lil Kim's childhood, and this is what it reads. Kim is like so many other women, it seems to me, who have grown up with trauma, and yet there is no talk of the long-term effects. I decided to put the question of sexual abuse to her plainly. I just don't want this to be taken down. I apologize. She tells me that yes, something did happen in the home of a relative when she was a girl, but she doesn't want to go into details. She has never talked about this before. She doesn't want to dwell on the pain. I'm saddened by her admission and the fact that so many years later, she's so clearly devastated. So let's talk about when Lil Kim and Christopher Wallace meet. And I also want to point out another thing, Olive wrote down, asterisk. This is not important, but helps paint a picture. Biggie was 6'2" and 350 pounds, parentheses, maybe more. And Lil Kim is 4'11" and so small. I'm sorry. I just imagine it from the eyes of someone like learning about these people. And it like, so by the time she formally met Christopher Wallace, she was 17. She was in the streets of Bed-Stuy in need of protection and a job. And before they met formally, they'd always kind of hung out in the same circles. They all knew the same people. She said in interviews that she remembers Christopher. It's so weird calling him Christopher. Mr. Wallace. No, I'm just kidding. She remembers him being on his stoop and like watching her and her friends interact. And she has said many times that she was always extremely timid around him. And this is somebody who, it's funny how that persona comes through in her music. And we always hear about like, you know, like Sasha Fierce with Beyonce, that's like somebody that she puts on. To me, I've always imagined her as this person who is like incredibly bold, and imagining her being shy around a guy, I think is sweet. But she was also like a 17-year-old girl. So like, yeah, we all got nervous. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think his like climb to success really started with Mary J. Blige. I think I'm running out of time. Her 1992 album, What's the 411? And he started looking for new talent, and his friend said, oh, you should talk to Lil Kim. She can really rap. Like, Part 4, Kim and Biggie. Saying Notorious B.I.G., like Biggie Smalls and Biggie, like sometimes my friends will send me like slang, like texted, and I'm like, I've never heard you fucking say that. Say it in a voice note, and they're like, Riz. And I'm like, you would never. So sometimes I feel like a fucking dork saying like, Lil Kim and Notorious B.I.G. And I guess sometimes like I code switch. Like, do you hear my reporter voice when I talk? I'm like, in the year of 1967, like I can't help it. Reading Rainbow, like, you know what I mean? Fly up in the sky, right? So Christopher Wallace, so Chris, so Mr. Wallace, so CW, he starts scouting his neighborhood for talent, right? And his mutual friends with Kim say, you should talk to Kimberly. She can really rhyme. She can really rap, right? So he says that when he walks up to her, she's wearing heels. I don't know why I can see it. She's wearing heels. She has a knapsack on, and she's smoking a, you know, not a cigarette, And he just says, I heard you know how to rap. And right there on the spot, she just starts rapping. Insane. I would be like, you know, at slumber parties when your friends are like, sing, sing, and you're like, okay, turn around and nobody look at me. And then you turn around, like you guys are facing each other, like, you're like, every night in my dream. Like, I would not. But he says from the moment she started that he knew that she was a star. And she is a star. Also, he has been quoted time and time again talking about the future of rap and female rappers. At this time, and still probably to this day, if we want to sit and talk about that, but whatever, hip hop was very much a boys' club. It was very seldom that there was a female rapper in the spotlight. Women were very much subject matter and accessories, maybe even to this day, but I don't want to talk about that right now. We're focusing on Kimberly and CW. But Biggie has said many times that she was the first female rapper. I just want to say rapper, but I guess it's important in this context. She was the first woman rapper, that could hold her own around these men. And I'm sure it was incredibly intimidating. If I could not sing in front of my 10-year-old peers, I can only imagine. So he brought Kimberly into what's called the B.I.G. family. Let me read you a list of people who are in this crew, right? Okay. Sean Puffy Combs, P. Diddy, Brotherly Love, Puff, Daddy. There's so many. Who is working to launch Bad Boy Entertainment. Mary J. Blige, Busta Rhymes, who went to high school with Biggie. Jay-Z is also from Bed-Stuy. Also went to high school with Biggie. Jay-Z and Lil Kim met when she was 12. Throughout Biggie's career, it's really important that the people he grew up with came up with. Part 5, Biggie and Lil Kim. So, when she is 20 and he is 22, his album, Ready to Die, made him, like, star. And now that he was in this position of power, like I said, he really, really was somebody who wanted the people that he grew up around. There's so much more to his story too, like about school and his mother. His mother is like, if you look up interviews of his mother, like she is an educator, she was a teacher, and he went to a private school, but he didn't want to go to school, he wanted to be on the street. Like there's so much, but I'm trying to focus on the relationship, okay? Like I'm just trying to, and to be honest, Lil Kim is mocked to such a degree that I really think it's important that we talk about her story more, but his story is also really, really complex and interested and about like ego and sensitivity and a lot. So I don't want people to think like I'm just glazing over him, like he doesn't matter. I just like want to focus on like, I don't want this to be part 67. What if I miss you in part 31 and then we don't get to the important part, you know what I mean? Like, so after Ready to Die, a huge success, he creates Junior M.A.F.I.A, which are made up of also people like his friends, and they debut a year after Ready to Die. Kimberly. So he cast Lil Kim as the soul and leading lady of the group. Throughout the years, whether they were in a platonic place or a romantic place, both of them have said in the past, because he tragically passed away, and that's a whole other thing. There's so much. I just want you to love pop culture like me, and not because Nepo babies are the least interesting part of pop culture, okay? There is so much. Pop culture is so much. Pop culture is culture, okay? Like, the reason we know how people lived and what they did and how they felt, pop culture is the mirror of where we are in society, right? So, anyway, they both said that they both prioritized each other's careers above all else. And after his death, Kim said this quote, well, when I do hear his music now, I'm still very proud to have seen his rise to the top of the hip-hop spectrum, as well as to have had him in my life as such a positive influence. She pauses. The drama, she pauses. But how can I not wonder how large he ultimately could have been? True. That bothers me more than anything. Oops, sorry. You know, the media, society, all these biopics, all these books, all these think pieces, all these documentaries, you know, depending on that person's POV, like Christopher Wallace is criticized and not picked apart, but it's crazy to think that without him, we would never have Lil Kim, who has she's never not been prolific as long as I've been alive. That's crazy. Part 6, Lil Kim and Biggie. Kim tells Rolling Stone the following quote. I have to burp. I have to stop this. No, I don't want you to hear it. Oh my God, Marge, why would you burp? It's disgusting. Tells Rolling Stones that Biggie easily accounts for 85% of my career. I was covering her. I'm sorry. For her first album, he produced it, and for many nights would sit and write with her and brainstorm ideas and go over everything. He was very much a perfectionist. Many people have said that over and over. They say the same thing. I mean, have you seen Making the Band? How could P. Diddy make those people deliver that cheesecake? If you know, you know. It's too much. When Audrey and Andrea, send her home right now. Oh no, we'll talk about that later. But because he was so dominant in his career and people just could not wrap their minds as a society that a man was supporting a woman, this narrative of Kim being his puppet essentially was created, which is extremely unfair. So there was a lot of discourse around if she wrote her raps, which she did. Which she did. She also talks a lot about, she has a lot of fond memories of them when they were beginning together, and they would ride the train together to his performances eating White Castle. And please tell me you know what White Castle is. People don't talk about White Castle anymore, but I used to live off Myrtle Wyckoff, so I love that White Castle. My brother once ate 32 little burgers. Disgusting evening. Anyway, she never missed one performance, one block party. However, the amount of power he had over her career while being romantically interested definitely was very messy. Ego is a hell of a drug. Ego is a hell of a drug. And there is a power imbalance here because Lil Kim was very much in a position where she felt that she needed him and that her best work and her best self was tied around him. And he also was, I want to say creative director, but I think controlling of her image is more correct. She has this one story where they were going to fly somewhere for a performance and she was running late to the airport, and when she showed up, she looked frazzled, and he stopped her and he said something to the effect of, if you're going to be a star, you better look like one. For who? For Newark? For the TSA at Newark? Where? However, there are many strokes of genius within his direction. For example, she had a tendency, because she looked up to these male rappers, that she had a big bark or boldness in her voice, and Biggie was like, why don't you soften your voice? Part 7, Lil Kim and Notorious. Okay, I can't do it. Notorious. I don't know why it makes me so happy that I'm sharing this with you. It's like, I don't know why. Okay, so they say enough is enough. We have feelings for each other. They start dating in 1993. She was 19, he was 21. However, at the same time, he begins a relationship with Faith Hill. Not Faith Hill. Sorry. Faith Evans. Faith Hill. Can you imagine? Today, my mom, I was telling her about how horrible it was going to the doctor's office, and she was like, well, when I used to take you to the vet, and both of us paused. We were like, excuse me? Who is Faith Evans? Faith Evans, singer, songwriter, actress, and it kills me that people know her as Stevie J's wife. That is not true. Stevie J was a producer and he worked with a lot of people, the same people that she did, a lot of people that we talked about earlier. Doesn't matter. But she's an icon in her own right. Stevie J is lucky. I can't believe I'm bringing up Stevie J. Like, if you think you haven't heard her voice, you definitely have. I'll be missing you about Christopher. So he starts dating Gemini from Lakeland, Florida, grew up in Jersey, went to Fordham University, June 10th, 1974. I'm sick. All right. Maybe you recognize this iconic fucking photo. But basically he was dating them both at the same time, and about like half a year into their relationship, Faith is like, is there something going on between you and Lil Kim? And he was honest and he was like, yeah, I've actually been with her this whole time. So Lil Kim went from the #1 support system, cheerleader, not support system, but a cheerleader, a partner, a muse, you know what I mean, in Biggie's life, to a mistress. And I cannot speak for her, but I cannot speak for Kimberly, but I can only imagine living a life to that point where the men in your life don't value you or dispose of you. Like to that degree. There is even a Biggie video where he cast a Lil Kim lookalike to play the defiant and obsessed mistress. Some say loyal, some say obsessed, depends on how you view the video. They separated right before he passed, and there was, do I talk about what? Part 8, Lil Kim and Biggie, and I just want to say a quick TW, a quick trigger warning. We're going to talk about some DV and things in that realm. So Lil Kim herself has said that she looks back and she realizes just how much she was attracted to heavily male-dominated relationships with men who did not keep her safe. And Biggie was not an exception. She has said many times that she actually hates the kind of person that she's attracted to. And I think many people who were raised in homes where they were not protected can see where she's coming from. Kim says that when they were together, it was either a violent fight or highly infatuated with one another. And that's a cycle. A toxic cycle. During one studio session, he actually pulled out a firing weapon. I just don't want this to be taken down on Lil Kim, which is terrifying. They were actually with Jermaine Dupri, who dated Janet Jackson for so many years. Pop culture is enriching, all right? So this is the quote from Jermaine Dupri about that evening in the studio. So what Biggie did is he wrote the rap for Lil Kim, and Lil Kim at this particular point in time, he had relations with one of Lil Kim's closest friends. My heart. And she found out about it and she was so upset, rightfully so upset that she came to the studio about this and he couldn't really get her to do the rap because she was so upset. The argument escalates and they go into the hallway. They went out into the hallway and a producer and Usher Raymond. Isn't it insane how everything, because P. Diddy discovered Usher, that's a whole other fucking thing. Who was in the studio, not discovered, you know what I mean? Like how Usher was with Justin Bieber, whatever. Who was in the studio recording the song Just Like Me, the Usher song, Just Like Me. He turned to someone in the studio and said, "Give me my weapon." Okay. Me and Usher, Jermaine Dupri's quote, me and Usher were just, we were there, we were young, watching what was going on, and B.I.G. pulled out the weapon on her. When asked to clarify why Biggie pulled this out, the producer responded to just let her know that he was going to unalive her. Kim has confirmed this story as not just gossip, but as fact. During this time, Kim is also pregnant with his child, and he is still married to Faith Evans. Part 9, Kim and Biggie. So he is still married to Faith Evans. She is with child. She chooses her choice, right? She does not keep this child. And at the same time while all of this is happening, she's recording her debut album, Hardcore, while also recording for Junior M.A.F.I.A's album, Conspiracy. As a result of this extremely volatile, heartbreaking time in her life, the subject matter is really dark. In fact, her producers have said that there were moments where they had to stop Kimberly from recording because it was just getting darker and darker. And it was a lot about getting hurt physically in elevators, and she describes a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of name calling, a lot of making somebody feel really small. And it's hard because I don't want to speak, it's not even speak ill of the dead. I think we don't have to We don't have to apologize for it. All we can do is try to understand it and hear stories like Kimberly's so that we can understand life and love and ego, because at the end of the day, that's what these stories are all about. This also contrasts a lot with Kimberly's firsthand accounts, where she does tend to romanticize these scary situations. And she says, they had a good relationship, that he made her home-cooked meals. She says that he always bought her Fendi bags. I don't even have a Fendi bag. I would love a Fendi bag. Diamonds. She said that she would serenade him all the time with Jodeci songs that he would sing, and she would say he actually has a really good voice. You know what's interesting is in the beginning of the series when I said, when I hear people describe someone else as like an old soul, that's exactly how Kim would describe him. Those words. He was such an old soul, which to me personally, and I could be wrong, I hear in this situation old soul, and I think father figure. She also says that he would figuratively bust down a lot of doors to get her in rooms and to sit at tables that she wasn't welcome to, or that she thought she would never be able to reach. But I will say, it does not take a genius to figure out, looking at the photos of the women that he was cheating on her with, had more Eurocentric features than she did, and this really affected her deeply. Part 10, Lil Kim and Biggie. Yeah, I said part 10. You know why my head is here. I want this to stay up. Actually, let me make it a little bigger, just in case. So she's 24 here, and this is her debut album, Hardcore. Incredible stuff. I had no business, but I did. I found a way and I did. I see you specs on US 1 in Miami, absolutely, next to the Swensons. Yeah. Scooped up some ice cream and I scooped up some Hardcore by Lil Kim. This is the highest ever debut album for a female rapper on the Billboard charts ever. You probably recognize this image. It's been recreated countless times. It's an iconic image, and Biggie chose this image. Apparently, after this photo shoot, he threw the negatives on the table and he said, that's the one. There are college courses about Lil Kim, exploring her lyricism, her womanhood, her career, her influence. I'm going to read you the descriptor about these college courses. Ready? These college courses on Lil Kim are about her relationship with womanhood, femininity, sex, money, blackness, feminism, fashion, politics, and more. Icon. Her lyrics are very sexy, and I would like to say, Olive, I appreciate you listing out some of these lyrics. There's no way. Let me see if I can read one. You... Only way you seeing me is if you know, you know. No, there's nothing. That's all I can do. It's woo. And while people want to say, oh my God, explicit, 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 your mom is explicit. These, these lyrics opened up conversations about female pleasure. And you know what? For the first time in a long time, I can't say if it's the first time, but to my little ears, promiscuity was powerful. In 1998, I know I call it Rolling Stones, leave me alone. Rolling Stone magazine wrote this, okay? It's about hardcore. Hardcore is not cheesy. It's packed with sweat-inducing beats and laced with Lil Kim's characteristic riffs on sexual freedoms. Sex, she believes, is a commodity. It is a way for a woman to earn money and, in her view, also respect. She learned that lesson on the streets. As for the women selling their bodies, I don't see anything wrong with that. Precisely, punto y aparte. Actually, the intro to this album, I don't know if you remember, but it starts with like the audio of a guy buying a ticket to like an X-rated film, and it's Lil Kim on screen, and he enjoys himself. But of course, this does not go without criticism. Of course, God forbid. Part 11. I said it. Part 11. Lil Kim and Biggie. Notorious. Asha Bandel, who is a music critic, poet, author, writer. She's just like every little abused girl that I knew growing up. I do not believe that Kim is in control of her image because there's nothing powerful about it, nothing rounded, nothing human. She is a caricature, just like when you see a male presenting himself as only a gangster. We're so much more complicated than that. So a lot of people also criticized this woman who was presenting as being so powerful. I saw my shadow and I thought it was a ghost, and my sphincter almost fell out of my body. I'm sorry to say that word, but I did. The end of my GI tract. So a lot of people also criticize this woman who is presenting as so powerful, being under the control and creative direction of men. An article by Pitchfork, written by Clover Hope. Kim was shaped by men who got to dictate how she would be marketed. If she was constantly being molded, and if being any other way than sexy wasn't a viable choice, she couldn't have completed this sense of power. What's remarkable is how rappers like Kim and Salt-N-Pepa, they're like, why am I in it? Despite being under the guidance of male producers, still use their voices as tools of liberation. What did you want them to do? It's like people fight to get their foot in the door, and then they complete this like huge thing, this like huge paramount moment in their lives, you know, break records, and still it's like, but it's not good enough, you know, how it was so male dominated, whatever, you get what I'm saying. And yes, I got the edge. I got it. There is a stylist called Misa Hilton that people don't talk about anymore, but when we talk about Y2 culture, that is a pivotal stylist. She was a stylist for every black celebrity in that time, like you fucking name it. And I'm talking Lil Kim with the wigs, the outfits. There's so much to unpack here, and I don't think music would be as bold or as colorful if it wasn't for Lil Kim, and I really mean that. She has continued to inspire so many prolific people. Beyonce has expressed that Lil Kim has been a muse to her. This is Lil Kim paying homage to Kimberly via costumes and recreating some of her iconic looks. This wig with the Chanel, yeah. So Christopher Wallace, aka the Notorious B.I.G., passes away in 1997. He was unalived at the age of 24. Part 12. So on March 9th, 1997, Notorious B.I.G. is, he loses his life after an attack. You know what happened, right? After the Soul Train Awards. He was in Los Angeles, and there is a big miscommunication. I'm trying to get around this. There's a big miscommunication between the East and West, and I'm sure you've heard about this before, but Tupac Shakur and Christopher Wallace are main characters within this miscommunication. There's a lot of conspiracy around both of their deaths. It's so odd how often this happens, but the morning he passed away, Lil Kim and Biggie spoke on the phone, and he would not stop telling her about how much he was proud of her and voiced his support, how he would always love her, how he would always support her. And I have to say, Lil Kim's heart is so forgiving. Yeah. She says that in that phone call, he kept telling her, "You're just such a beautiful person." And you know what? I really do think she is. And she's made a lot of mistakes. She went to jail. She does not snitch. She lied to a grand jury about seeing her friend at the scene of a crime. And she served time. She's solid. I love you, Kimberly Jones. I love you. I don't know if you watched my Tupac and Jada Pinkett Smith series, but Jada says something really similar to what Lil Kim says. Jada says she had this feeling that he wouldn't be around much longer. And Lil Kim says the exact same thing. She said because of his attitude, that she had a feeling. And I think by attitude, she means pride, I think. This whole thing is like a whole other conversation. And there's like, I want you to imagine like a dot and then all these lines. Like that's how I feel about this story. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Moving on. After this, she sinks into a deep, deep depression. She actually stays in his condo in New Jersey with his family. Even though he was, I'm going to say it, he was cruel. Even though he was cruel to her, she still felt in her heart that it was an irreplaceable person, professionally and intimately, in a way where they had seen each other at their best and at their worst, and they understood a level of success in this society that not many other people around them could relate to. And you know what? I don't think Kim could relate to a lot because of her heart. Part 13. I don't think I even said that that's Mary J. Blige with her. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like things are obvious, but then I look back and I'm like, why didn't you say that? She does an interview 3 years after he leaves this realm, and she revealed that she has some of his ashes in an urn in her home, and that the grieving doesn't get easier. I'll read you the direct quote. You'd think it would get easier with time, but it doesn't. And she says that she felt true loss and being lost after his death. Here's a quote. Working on the album without Biggie was the hardest thing I have ever had to do. Just living without him is the hardest thing for me to do. So in the year 2000, she makes her second album. Is that the album with the jump off? Through this album, she says that she finally was able to learn how to take control of her career, trust her instincts, and she starts taking control of the music being released from her recording label called Queen Bee that's distributed by Atlantic Records. So she's also a record executive, babe. Biz woman in the biz. In her song, Hold On, 3 years after he passes, she writes this. Oh, how it hurts like childbirth. The wounds heal slow, you just don't know. At times, I don't know what to say. And all I do is pray day to day, but still I feel my strength might die. Like right now, I'm trying hard not to cry. Even when I close my eyes, not me getting goosebumps. Grow up, Tefi. But when I close my eyes, I still see it. Damn, I just don't believe it. The bad times I buried, like in the cemetery. So while her lyrics and her sexuality and the way that she presents herself has earned her quite a lot of criticism, nothing gets more criticism than Lil Kim's physical attributes and the plastic surgery that she's undergone. And because the media is so obsessed with narcissism and vanity within celebrities and fighting age, and I feel like the media, especially in the 2000s, would sniff out an insecurity like an Achilles heel, an attack, because they knew that if there's one thing insecure people love, it's a dog pile. So I'd like to take a moment just to talk about that really quickly. So Lil Kim has endured criticism about her physical appearance since the beginning of her career. Especially with her lyrics, people would debate whether or not she was sexy, if she was hot, if she was beautiful. And I see people all the time being like, oh, she was so beautiful, she was so beautiful. I think it is a common misconception that she went under so much surgery for the sole purpose of changing herself and not the injuries she sustained. The only reason I'm watching my words is because I want to do it just. Part 14, Lil Kim and Biggie, and I just wanted to talk about her physical appearance that I see so consistently mocked all the time. In a radio interview in 2005, Lil Kim revealed that she wasn't getting various rhinoplasties, nose jobs done because of nothing else other than she kept getting her nose done, and then she would return to an abusive boyfriend and he would continue to break her nose. And she had to reconstruct her face because of the bone damage in her eye sockets and in her cheeks. I'm going to read you a quote. The New York native revealed that she had to fix her nose not once but multiple times, every time she'd go through a procedure and come back to her boyfriend. Oh, that's so sad. He'd hit her and send her reeling into a tangle of insecurities and self-loathing. It's not just her face that was damaged as a result of these brutal attacks. Kim had to undergo multiple MRIs because, quote, he beat me up so bad I couldn't even move. She suffered from blood clots in her back, and she became tired of lying about her injuries, pretending that they were an allergic reaction or that she had fallen. burying her bruises in makeup for years, that she thought it would be better to get professional work done and wipe out those physical markings once and for all so she didn't have to remember them. Here she is pictured with him. Another quote, I prayed the whole time. I didn't know what to do, and it has a lot to do with my maturity too. It's been times I was in the car with my ex and he punched me in the face and I was all over the car. The doctor had to fix my nose because it shattered. Because of this, she opened up her foundation, Lil Kim Cares, which does work to provide sources, raises awareness and funds for people suffering homelessness, child neglect, and women who are in need of support and help and safety. In a 2000 interview, she says this, Lil Kim shared that she's faced insecurities for as long as she could remember. Her boyfriends kept cheating on her with European-looking women with long hair type. She goes on to say, I couldn't compete as a regular black girl, and she thought she would never be good enough. It's not just former lovers that have triggered feelings of doubt and shame in her. She's endured verbal humiliation at the hands of her father. It's always been men putting me down. It's always been men putting me down, just like my dad. And finally, I'll say this. To this day, this is a quote from her, to this day when someone says I'm cute, I can't see it. I don't see it no matter what anyone says. And no matter the commentary or the humiliation, Lil Kim still shows up, and she'll always be somebody that changed the face of music and continue to give us powerful music.